Hey everyone, welcome to Infill Lot Recon. My name is Mike Marshall with WholesaleLandDepot.com. For more than a decade, I've been helping investors learn how to avoid the landmines and capitalize on the opportunities that exist with vacant infill lots. If you are or have a goal of becoming an infill lot investor, you're in the right place. So today is the first in an ongoing series of episodes called Due Diligence Disasters. I want to share with you what can happen if you don't do the proper due diligence. But first, here's my disclaimer. The story I'm about to share, while very real, is not typical. The story is not intended to scare you away from investing in infill lots. Rather, it's intended to give you context and serve as a cautionary tale about the things that have and could happen in your career. Investing isn't 100% risk-free. My goal is to help reduce the risk as much as possible. So with that, this is what happened. One day I got a call from an investor who says the following: "Hey, I just bought this lot and I want to know what I can do with it." Immediately my thought is, oh no, what did this guy do? My first question for him is, well, where'd you buy it? Now that may not seem like a relevant question, but it gives me context sometimes if it's really what I think it is. So he says, oh yeah, I just bought it at a tax sale. Well, I say, perfect, great. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing about buying at a tax sale or from a tax default list on the surface, but if this guy didn't do his due diligence beforehand, it makes me a little bit concerned. So here we go. It couldn't have been a personal reason of the previous owner as to why this whole thing sold. It could be something just really, really simple, but it could also mean that there's something inherently wrong with the property itself or with the circumstances surrounding the property. And that's what the due diligence process should have weeded out if he had done it at all. So this is what we were looking at. This was one of 4 same-sized parcels immediately adjacent to one another, stuck right in the middle of a subdivision that was built in the 1960s. The lot fronted onto an existing city-maintained roadway with all utilities right in the street. Sounds kind of good so far, right? Well, the lot was approximately 8,000 square feet in size and had a view from the backyard onto a green hillside that ran up to a street above this one. The property was zoned for single-family residential and was of a proper size where you could theoretically build a home of comparable size with the others in the neighborhood. In other words, it would be easy for a builder to meet the setback requirements and all applicable development standards. Even better, when you look at past permit records, it showed that permits were once issued to the property to build a house. So that sounds good. Seems like it could actually be permitted and built. Well, in fact, the permits actually say that it was actually finalized. And this is when the warning lights should have been going off for the investor's mind, because this means it's about to get a bit weird. So our investor friend really didn't get very far in his due diligence efforts. And this is what I was able to find out with just a bit of digging. The question now really shouldn't be, why hasn't someone built on the property? The question now should be, well, what happened to the house? Now, if you remember, there was 3 additional vacant lots right next to this one. Well, what's the story with those lots? So I dug a bit more, and you know what? I found the same thing. So now at this point, there should be massive red warning signs going off in your head. So there was once 4 houses built on these lots in the 1960s, and now all 4 of them are gone. So I broadened my search a bit more because at this point I had a hunch as to what was going on. I looked at the lots on the street perpendicular to this one, and I found the same thing. On that street, there was 3 vacant lots. All 3 had houses on them at one time. Now here's the important connection. All 7 of these lots share the same backyard view with the same hillside. Now, even that house that should have been on the top of the hillside, that lot that was sitting up top there right next to the street, there wasn't even a house on that lot up there either. So now at this point, I had essentially 8 lots that should have had housing on them, and none of the houses were there anymore. So by this point, you may have pieced this all together. So to recap, here's what we got. Our investor friend bought one of 8 vacant parcels within an otherwise built-out subdivision. 1 is uphill of a hillside, and 7 are located on 2 flanks on the downhill side of the same hillside. By all applicable development standards, the houses should be sitting on each of these properties. As a matter of fact, at one time, there were houses on each of these lots. So what happened? When doing your due diligence, it's important to talk to more than just the planning division, especially if you're not getting it to the bottom of the issue. You may even need to reach out to the engineering division at the city or the county. So once I did this, I was able to confirm my suspicions. I found out that less than 10 years after the subdivision was built out, there was a landslide in the area. That landslide caused enough damage to the houses on those 8 lots so that each of them were red tagged and eventually had to be demolished. So at this point, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why hasn't somebody gone back and built on these lots in the 40 plus years since? Well, the bottom line is it's just too expensive. A large amount of engineering work was needed to stabilize the hillside. Even worse, in order to stabilize the hillside for one of the lots, somebody would actually have to do the same work for all of the lots. That meant getting the buy-off and cooperation from every one of the other property owners, and that would just be really, really cumbersome and burdensome for a lot of people. And apparently these lots were somewhat notorious with the city. For over 40 years, people would call from time to time and ask about these lots as they went on and off the tax sale list. So most certainly the picture I've painted here has been pretty bleak. At this most certainly a rare occurrence, like I said at the beginning, but it does happen, and you don't want to be the one left holding the bag. But what do you do if you're the investor in this story? The thing is, you can't claim that you can't do anything with the property due to some regulations. That's called a regulatory taking, by the way. But you can technically build on the property. It just may not pencil. It just may not make sense. So what does this mean to you? If you're only flipping the land, you're not looking to build anyway. So the question is, what can you sell a lot like this for? You know what the builder would be looking for, but you know that they're not your target customer anymore because it really may not pencil. Nobody's done it over the last 40 years, right? So understanding the zoning on this property is going to help a bit. In this case, however, the zoning is set up for a single-family house. Zoning prohibits RVs, mobile homes, or even just camping on it. The reality of the situation is that it'll likely be an engineering firm or a developer that will come in one day, buy up all the parcels, hoping that the economies of scale kick in and it all will eventually pencil out. But otherwise, who knows what the real value is on this thing? And at the end of the day, who knows will actually buy it and at what price? So that's going to do it for another episode of Infill Lot Recon. Check out the next episode where we'll talk more about infill lot due diligence that'll help you avoid the landmines and take advantage of the opportunities found with infill lot investing. If you have any comments or questions, or if you're interested in our consulting services, go ahead and email me at info@wholesalelanddepot.com. As always, you can find us on YouTube or on our website at wholesalelanddepot.com. See you next time. Thanks.